All right, guys, welcome into Big Hitters Only. We are live here on Sunday night, a late one, 10:04. We have Mike. Mike's been a regular off and on throughout Big Hitters Only, and Riley Davis has been on. I think this is his third time. Welcome, guys. UNC gets a number 6 seed, and they will play VCU on Thursday at 6:50 with the Bill Rafferty, Ian Eagle, and Grant Hill calling there. I think it's what we expected. 6 seed. UNC falls in the quarterfinals to Clemson. Got this score up here, 80-79. We'll get into the ACC Tournament, UNC's seed line, VCU a little bit, and then getting a little deeper on kind of the future of UNC and Hubert Davis. First, Mike, when you saw them get 6 seed and VCU, what were your initial thoughts, initial breakdown of the future right now, the immediate future of UNC basketball?
Yeah, I think honestly, 6 seed is exactly what everyone was expecting, so that wasn't a huge surprise. I think generally the fan base was optimistic that we might get like a Nebraska as a 3 seed or something like that. But when the bracket started shaking out the way it did, I think everyone kind of slotted in Michigan State or Illinois into that kind of 2-3. And so kind of knew coming in as the bracket got revealed, hey, it's going to be a tough 3 seed. But to be frank, there isn't a easy 3 seed on the schedule. And when you play yourself into a 6 seed, you're going to have a tough second round game. VCU, we'll get into it a little bit. When I first saw it, I looked them up. Tough from 3-point range. They take good shots. They're athletic, which is kind of scary given how Carolina's played recently. But on paper, they're the worst 11 seed there is. So you have to be grateful. It could have been a lot more difficult. Honestly, I would have been afraid of USF. I didn't want to play anyone that played in the play-in game. So all things being equal, when you're a 6 seed, you're kind of expecting this type of draw.
Riley, what do you think?
Yeah, in terms of the way the bracket shook out, I just want to, we can get into some of the, I know we're going to get into the macro Hubert Davis questions later, but I just want to see us win this one game because I think VCU is more likely to beat Carolina than Illinois. I think we match up extremely well with them, and they don't really have an answer for Henry Vasar. And I think if you play through him that game, Illinois can't really check either. There are some ways that Carolina could manufacture advantages there, but I just think based on what we saw this past week at the ACC Tournament, them coming in cold into their first tournament game with a Clemson team, coming off of a win the day before, it seemed like there was some sort of acclimation period to that game, which, we could argue whether or not that should ever be a factor for UNC, but it was, and that does make me a little hesitant where it's those first game jitters are going to be there. And VCU is extremely well coached. Phil Martelli Jr., winner. Before he was with the Rams, he was at Bryant last year and really assembled a team with power conference level size across the board. If you remember, they were a popular cover pick against Michigan State last year in the 2-15 matchup because of their size. This VCU team is a little bit built the same way. They have great length along the perimeter from Jadrian Tracy, who at points this year he had a massive game against NC State in the non-conference. Barry Evans at the 4. Lazar Djokovic, who's sort of this do-everything wing for them, who's 6'10", 6'11". So there are ways in which that they could give Carolina some matchup issues just with how you've seen the Heels struggle to guard really throughout the course of the season consistently. This is a top 50 offense coming to town, shooting 36% from 3 over their last 10 games. So that's scary for me. But again, if we can get past that game, this game, and just get that first tournament win under our belt, I mean, who doesn't want to see the 2005 rematch storylines for a round 2 game? That's pretty fun. So that was my initial reaction upon seeing this.
You pull up their stats on ESPN, just look at the 3-point shooting, kind of some baseline stuff. I mean, their top 8 players, 36% from 3, 35% from 3, 37% from 3. 43% from 3, 35, 50. I mean, everyone can shoot the 3. It looks like, and just reading some early analysis from some people at CBS, some texts I'm getting, they seem like they have the kryptonite for UNC, guards that can get into the lane and guards that can knock down threes, which has been an issue for UNC, certainly in the middle of the season. Got a little bit better at the end of the season, but it does feel like an early pick, an early upset pick. There's always these teams that, all right, you got to pick a 6 over 11 or a 12 over 5. It feels like a very favorite for one of those, which is not good for UNC. Anything else on VCU, Mike? See you trying to chime in?
I think the one thing that we haven't brought up is I'm very grateful for the Greenville, South Carolina, luck there. I think having a relatively local fan base, being able to come in and change the atmosphere there a little bit, although we didn't see it in Charlotte in the ACC tournament. I don't think VCU is going to travel as well as Carolina does. Illinois certainly won't. So that's the one thing that I think is a factor that probably hasn't been brought up. I know we opened as a 2.5 point favorite on most of the betting sites. That's,
Yeah.
whenever you're seeing a 6-11 being a 2.5 point favorite, obviously that's a little scary. But I do wonder, as we see the week progress, if people start to realize that, Greenville, South Carolina is about as lucky as a draw as we could have gotten.
Yeah, I was editing an article for CBS, and I was putting some numbers in there. It's 90 minutes from Charlotte, and 30, 45 minutes from the border, really close to Asheville. So certainly a great place. There's a lot of Carolina fans in South Carolina. So Greenville will be there with Duke. So that's easy for like the TV media in the triangle, little inside the biz. You'll have all the TV stations there. Well, I guess not the people that go to Dayton for the Wolfpack, clinching that 11 seed. But it's kind of cool from a media perspective. You have all the writers, Duke and Carolina, and TV stations, radio people, like an easy choice for our friends over at the OG. They'll if they are going, they'll go to the Duke UNC things like that. Quickly here, yeah, actually, let's go through the bracket real quick. Just the route that UNC could take if they were to win. VCU 6:50 on Thursday. If they win, they'll play the winner of Illinois Penn. You assume that's Illinois. Illinois has got been pretty consistent and have some great freshmen this year. And then you'd go against like a St. Mary's, Texas Tech. Sorry, St. Mary's, Texas A&M, Houston, Idaho. You assume that's kind of a Houston versus Texas A&M, St. Mary's. You assume Houston win there. So it could be a Houston matchup in the Sweet 16 if they were to get there quickly. Let's talk about Roback. Roback.com, new promo code, Big Hitters 20. I think I said it right. Big Hitters 20 is the new promo code. The BHO 20 got compromised. Big Hitters 20. Mike's got a Roback vest on. He's telling me he wears Roback 9 out of 10 days. Riley's got a Roback hoodie. I've got one too. This is like one of the UNC things that I got. Super comfortable. Tons of polos, really cool polos, joggers, vests, hoodies, pants, shorts, men's, women's, anything. Roback.com. Buy a couple things, really helps us pay behind the scenes. Garrett and Connor doing the work behind the scenes late at night here for this late night pod. All right, let's get a step back here. Mike was at the Clemson UNC game in the ACC tournament. I was there. That's kind of another data point for this Hubert team this particular season. Just not really showing up, kind of more the same. I thought it was very lackadaisical effort. Couldn't get anything going. It's pretty much everything you don't like about the Hubert Davis coach team was in that game. And when you consider this UNC team, you got to consider they're without their best player in Caleb Wilson, and that changes everything. They've been playing their whole season with him. He's been able to hide a bunch of things. He's been able to dominate games. He's an easy valve, both on defense and offense. When you need a quick basket, alley-oop, block shot, he's been there. He's been unbelievable. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. But the Clemson game, winning the first game in the ACC tournament, wasn't pretty. Riley, what'd you think? What'd you see from that game? Quickly here, and then we'll kind of get into some bigger picture stuff.
It brought to light a bunch of big picture issues we've seen from UNC really all season, namely defensively, where they just can't make opposing guards uncomfortable. And I would say that's more of an issue throughout Hubert's tenure, where you see Ace Buckner got whatever he wanted. Who was it? It was Justin Porter. Seth Trimble went under screen against him early, led to a wide open three. It's like this constant going under screens or miscommunications that we've seen throughout this year. But again, it's reared its ugly head throughout these past 5 seasons as well. But even beyond that, like some of those defensive issues, it felt like the rotations, the substitution patterns, some of them really had me scratching my head. Like I don't get how it's March 15th and we're still seeing Kyan Evans, Jaden Young, backcourt of doom minutes. That's what I dubbed it, where I don't want to be overly cynical. You know what? I am going to be overly cynical.
Yeah, bring it.
We might as well. We got bodied for 35 minutes in that game. And that's just kind of unacceptable given the program's history. When you factor even 7 or 8 years ago, Clemson was pretty much a free win anytime UNC played them. And It's just changed quickly to where now these middling yet well-coached teams in the ACC can give Carolina a game or straight up beat them. And I'd very much say, like, Brad Brownell, good coach in the sense where he gets the most out of his rosters. But you look at that Clemson team, even with Carter Welling, I should say, it doesn't blow you away with talent. They more so come at you in waves with like the front court depth, which is good. They played through their bigs all season. And I think Nick Davidson proved to be a matchup nightmare. That's actually something that's a little bit worth monitoring, I think, for Lazar Djokovic, because he also is like a big who can dribble and is going to get a lot of his buckets in sort of one-on-one situations or taking slower-footed guys off the bounce. Like Stevenson really has to have his A game in terms of like defensively speaking to go against to contain him offensively. But anyway, just some of I would say the big picture issues from defensive scheme, defensive game plan, plus still not really knowing who to go to when things get messy or when you need to send a message or sticking with weird lineups for way too long. And the lack of depth that we've also seen.
I mean, you look at some of those lineups and it was like, who's going to score with this lineup? I mean, it's like, because Luka's not become what we thought he'd become. He's not been a consistent scorer. You're like, all right, he can go out there and get you a bucket. He's not that. Derek's not really that. He's been clutch, but he's not really like a go-to one-on-one scorer. And then Vasar has to kind of get the ball in certain places. And he was so good playing off Caleb Wilson. And you know, he's good here and there, but he's not really like, he needs someone to get him the ball in a good spot. And then he can do his thing. I mean, who else? I mean, I can't even, Kyan Evans obviously hasn't really done much. And then Jared Stevenson's like, he's not consistent either. He can't really create his own offense. He's more of a shooter and he's not making his shots. You know, it's like, all right, what are we really doing out there? And then Jaden Young, I mean, love the Greensburg guy, but you know, exactly. You see a Jaden Young, Derek Dixon backcourt, or Jaden Young, Powell, Kyan Evans backcourt, or Luka. It's just there's not many weapons, and that goes back to missing the transfer portal. They missed at the guard a couple times without Caleb Wilson. Say it again. It's just like it's tough. That's why I think I'm gonna pick VCU to beat UNC, and definitely UNC not to make it to Sweet 16. Riley, man, you are in the busiest hotel lobby in the nation. You can hear right. We can hear you great.
Noise.
Yeah, it's fine though. We can hear you great. Just to let people know, Riley's a trooper. He's coming on. I mean, where are you?
I'm in New York City. So,
oh man, that's right. Big Hitters International.
Yeah, right.
So we appreciate Riley coming on. But that's why there's so much background noise. Mike, you were there, so you have a different perspective. You were sitting, I think, baseline. You told me. So what did you see from this UNC team? You were. I think I was behind the UNC bench and you were on the other side.
Yeah, I was like maybe 5 rows on the baseline. Took my dad to a game. He hadn't been to a UNC game yet this season. In a way, it was a perfect game to bring him to because it's kind of like all the flaws that we've had, right? Start slow. I mean, Riley hit on most of it. Turnovers, sloppy first half. Bench points outscored 29-5. There's just no one that you can rely on coming off the bench you know is going to provide a spark. Luka only had 5 points. They got lackadaisical in the first half, and you know, at a certain point you have, and we're going to get to this, you have to kind of put it on coaching because you can see at the end of the game how they kind of come alive. You see the plays they're running at the end of the game to go on a 21-7 run to finish up the game to bring within 1 point after being down 15. So you know they're capable of it. You know the players are capable of it. But some of the lineup choices, at one point they had Henry out, kind of what Riley was saying with Jaden Young and Kyan Evans and Zayden High-End, and you just knew, every Carolina fan watching the game, I had people around me just being like, what are we doing? Like, everyone watching the game knew that was when Clemson was going to go on a run, and that's exactly when they did. You know, it's just wildly disappointing because I think Henry Vasar has a career game with 28 and 17, and it will be a minor footnote in a forgotten game from a season that we probably won't make it. We may not make it past the first round of the NCAA tournament. And so, you know, I think it's a good transition to kind of the macro discussion. But, you know, I think it's roster construction. I think it's lack of development. I think it is a weird understanding of what lineups to play when and not knowing how to motivate your team in the first half because we've seen how many times this season where the team is significantly better in the second half, plays a little bit more passion and intensity in the second half, but the first half just comes out lazy and slow and gets behind.
Yeah. I think it's like not putting your players in positions to be successful is one way to kind of summarize what you're saying there as well, Mike, and some of what Riley was saying there. I sat behind the UNC bench, so I had just watched Duke play on Thursday, and they beat Florida State. It was actually a really good game, and I was comparing the two coaching staffs. And I've covered Hubert, and I've also watched him from afar for a couple of years now too. And he's calling out plays on almost every offensive set, and it's just weird because you're used to like Roy Williams' transition offense and the secondary break and a motion offense, and they're calling certain sets, and like that's great because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But and then the weird lineups, like I said, and he's getting so animated, like it almost. Sometimes I felt really bad for him because like I don't know if he has the horses to like execute what he wants because these guys are young too. They're 18, 19, 20, and something goes wrong and it doesn't work. And I mean, it happens all the time in basketball. It was weird to see how frustrated he was getting at certain times in the game, how mad he was getting at the players during timeouts and stuff. He was yelling at Steve Kirshner for certain stats so he could bring those stats into the huddle. It was bizarre. And I'll just say this now because it was a big takeaway from watching Duke and Carolina. So Duke had 20 non-coaching staff members on their bench and behind their bench and the extension of their bench. 20. So that's 6 coaches plus 20 staff members. That includes managers and trainers. You have like 6 or 7 managers. They had 3 middle-aged white guys who I did not recognize sitting kind of at the end of near the end of the bench. 3 more like random middle-aged, maybe like scouts or analytics guys sitting behind the bench. They had they had 2 different types of managers. They had like the plebe manager, which was like wearing the polo shirt and doing the grunt work. They had one dude that did all the work. He was wearing wraparound glasses. He's filling up water bottles, sweating his ass off. And they had like 5 other like plebe managers. And they had like 6 or so like almost like secondary assistants who would call out exactly what Florida State was going to run on every single play. So they had scouted the Florida State guards and the hand signals or whatever. It was advanced scouting. And so they would see a set, they would see a hand motion or some verbal indicator, and they would yell the play out to the Duke defense. So Duke knew exactly what Florida State was going to be running on probably 85% of the plays. And they had an analytics guy on the laptop charting stuff. I'm not sure how much that's used. And then obviously Duke's staff is John Scheyer, Chris Carrawell. I mean, so many non-Duke guys now. Riley, you named a couple of guys that they're all on their staff. I mean, just young people. Mike Scroggie, the director of basketball ops, was head coach Elon. He's on staff there. But the main part was like they have a massive operation that is so locked in and so different from what UNC was doing. UNC has the same 5 assistants they've had since Hubert got hired. They have the run-of-the-mill managers. They do have an analytics person on a laptop, which I think is new this year. They have a guy on a laptop that they hired, and they have the trainer, and just nothing's changed. I mean, the same number of staff members that Roy Williams had. You know, you have like the 6 managers and like an ops guy and Air Coots, and then the trainers and the strength conditioning coach who've been there forever. And that was like kind of jarring. And Duke's way ahead of UNC. Duke's way ahead of most teams in NCAA. Super successful coach. John Scheyer is about to set the record for the most, or has set the record for the most wins in the first 4 years. They have the number 1 seed, I think, in back-to-back years. They had number 1 seed, overall seed last year too. I'm not sure it was number 1 overall.
Yeah,
but
they
had
did. Back-to-back number 1 overall seeds.
Yeah. And they're going to have first round, Karen Booz is probably going to be the number 3 pick, I'd imagine. But you're going to have lottery picks back-to-back years. And so there's a huge dichotomy right now between UNC and Duke. And we've thought of them in similar ways. You know, when I was in school, UNC had the edge. 05, 09, the Hansberg years. And then Duke won a title in 10. And then UNC kind of got back with the Harrison Barnes, Reggie Bullock, Kendall Marshall era. And then Duke won again in 15. And then, recruiting was kind of going down under Roy. And then they won in 17. And then, recruiting kept going down a little bit. And Duke kind of rotated into that more one-and-done style. But then UNC won in 17. And then Hubert came back and beat Duke in 22 twice. And then Scheyer took over, and it's kind of been a drastic different. I mean, this year was not awful for UNC. But compared to Duke, it's a completely different trajectory of programs. Mike, I'll let you. There's a lot right there. I just want to kind of lay it out. Mike, I want your general take on that. We've talked about it before on this podcast. You weren't here. But that's just one thing I think a lot of fans are talking about right now, especially on Twitter. And I think it is it's hard to ignore it as a fan who has been following ACC basketball and Duke and UNC for 35 years.
Yeah, I mean, not awful is not the standard for Carolina basketball, right? Like, and that's a tough conversation here. Is that I think you can generally look at Hubert's career at Carolina and think that there are a lot of bottom half ACC teams that would kill to have that, right? But that's just not the standard that Carolina expects out of his basketball program. The number 6 seed, this is from Greg Barnes at Inside Carolina. The number 6 seed that Carolina received this season is the second best seed they've received since 2019, right? That is unfathomable to someone that kind of grew up in that Hansbrough era, the Harrison Barnes era, the Marcus Page era, right? Like, I think all of us understand that this just isn't going to be enough. And I think that's the tough part. I think there's an interesting discussion I had with a bunch of Carolina fans, and the idea is how many top 50 programs right now, if take away the Carolina affiliations and everything like that, would go out and hire Hubert Davis as a coach, right? And I think you'd be hard pressed to find one. Doesn't mean that he's a bad coach. Doesn't mean that he wouldn't do well in some other programs. I just don't think that he is bringing the right mentality to Carolina basketball. You brought up a point about the Duke staff that I think weren't being addressed, right? You're seeing them kind of on the cutting edge of the new wave of how basketball program operations are done. But I also remember when we played Alabama in the NCAA tournament, the Withers shot that kind of blew the game, if you remember that one. The post-mortem talked about how many staff members on Alabama and SEC teams there are running analytics kind of in the background compared to the traditional Carolina staff that we've seen and that you just talked about. I think you're seeing time and time again a hesitancy and a reluctance to move forward and change how things are done at Carolina. We saw that with Hubert being reluctant to hire a general manager, that basically being forced on him by Bubba Cunningham. You have to be forward-looking when you're tackling coaching and with the ever-changing landscape that you have in college basketball. And if we have a coach that's not willing to do that, then you have to have a deeper discussion about, if it's warrant retention, given the fact that if you don't move forward, you're going to get left behind.
I want to jump in here real quick, and you can keep going, Mike, if you need to. Yeah. So the Alabama thing in the tournament, also when they came to Carolina, I remember reading. I don't read a lot of Adam Lucas. No, I didn't read. It was on the podcast, the Adam Lucas Carolina Insider, and he was talking about how it's kind of the first time it got brought to my attention. Like, they're cutting tape at halftime from the first half, and even like during media timeouts, and they're giving the coaching staff iPads or whatever's legal of stuff that they're cutting from the in-game stuff. So it's like football, where you're looking at what's going on live, and that is like, I mean, that's how what you should be doing. It's harder in basketball because it's not as long as football, but it's just massive staff members. And look, just hire a bunch of these analytics students who are statisticians and smart dudes at Carolina to do that. But it is, you said it right, like cutting edge stuff. And I think a good example, maybe they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they aren't available because they're not hiring new staff members. So when you bring back the same staff, you're not bringing in new ideas. I think Marcus Page probably is bringing in some new ideas just based on how young he is, and I know he's super into stats and played abroad. But the other guys haven't been with any other coaching staffs or any of the NBA in 6 or 7 years. And Sean May has only played for Carolina, played in the NBA a little bit, and then coached at Carolina. And these guys aren't bringing in new ideas, and I think that's why I thought there needs to be bringing new assistants. I think probably after last year, probably after the year they didn't make the tournament. Like, you got to bring in new ideas, like a defensive coordinator, an offensive coordinator, someone who knows exactly how to change things. Riley, jump in here on this Duke UNC comparison and kind of getting into this coaching conversation with UNC.
A lot of thoughts, Ross. I'm glad you teed it up. In terms of like the Duke comparison, this is blue blood things, man. This is what comes with the territory. You compare yourself to your peers, especially when one of them is 8 miles down the road from you, who you are linked to for all of history. And Ross, I texted this to you beforehand, but a season ago we saw Jay Lucas take the Miami job. Looks like an excellent head coach, by the way. Very forward thinking, and even what Miami does well from a defensive perspective, it's essentially Duke light. They have this massive front line from the 3 through 5. They have Ernest Uday playing like the Derek Lively role. He's not as gifted of an athlete or as mobile as Lively, but he's the dude who's like, all right, I'm planting my rim protector in the paint. I'm going to dare you to score around him. I'm putting 6'9" Malik Renew next to him, just double up on that length. And then you got to deal with Shelton Henderson, a 6'6", 240-pound wing on the perimeter. Like, he's very forward thinking and understands like what it takes to build a good roster that can compete in year one. I mean, they won 17 more games than they did a season ago. And now his replacement, Evan Brads, is on the verge of getting hired at Belmont. And I honestly think his stock is only going to, like, he's someone I'm high on just with his NBA background, coaching on the Celtics staff, and then he worked with like the
Jazz
team. Oh yeah, it was the Jazz. I think maybe he was with the Jazz, and then he was with the Celtics G League team. I think.
I'm looking at his Wikipedia right now.
Okay,
he was with the Red Claws, the Celtics G League
Yes.
team. Then the Boston Celtics assistant for, it looks like 4 or 5 seasons. Utah Jazz for 3 or 4 seasons, and this is his first year as Duke assistant. I mean, I probably recognize this guy, but I probably knew when he was hired, but I did not recognize him. Dude, he's 31 years old. Tall guy with a beard, played at Belmont, so it makes sense that he might get that own meeting at Belmont. Go ahead.
It's like they're young, they're forward thinking, and a couple different layers here. Like, Coach K probably left Scheyer a program in a better position than UNC was in 2021. And yet you can't completely discount that recruiting class that Hubert retained was a bunch of McDonald's All-Americans, from Caleb Love to RJ Davis to Puff Johnson. Actually, I don't think Puff was a McDonald's All-American, but he was a high 4-star kid. Who am I forgetting about? Wasn't there one more McDonald's All-American in that class? I know Kessler and Dayron Sharp were, but they were both gone. I might be missing somebody, but it wasn't like the cupboard was completely bare. And yet you can go back to the summer of 2021, and Hubert's first commit in the high schooler class is Will Shaver. You look at like Scheyer's first recruiting class, and he got Kyle Filipowski and Derek Lively. Like, UNC didn't get the blue blood new coach bump with these recruits and just use scholarships on guys who didn't really, I don't want to say deserve it or earn it, but like not Carolina caliber players. And it just seems like since then it's a hyper hesitancy to adapt and to evolve. I mean, you mentioned it with Alabama. They have a ton of student staff who work on analytics and scouting and everything. And don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating to model anything after like what UNC football is doing right now. But one thing I think they have right, they have like a whole team of student scouts who like chop up film of high school guys for them and report on it to the coaching staff, where like you have, I mean, there's 17,000 undergrad students. Surely there's someone smart enough to help out the basketball team who would jump at the opportunity for it, and it's probably cheap labor. You know, there's so many resources that could be there. And meanwhile, I don't mean to, like, again, be overly negative or pile on, but, you know, when you see quotes from Hubert saying, like, oh, I look at the analytics report from Marcus and Shaw May every 10 games, that's 3 times a season. Maybe like 4 if you make a deep tournament run. And it just feels like it's not a...
I saw that quote and like I was like, is that real? Like, I would think you'd be looking at analytics like during the game, like in-game analytics.
It feels like when you have a boomer parent that says they check their email every couple weeks. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh my God.
And maybe I didn't understand it, but yeah, you would think you're like, all right, Luka scores better off catch and shoot threes, not off the dribble. Let's run more catch and shoot threes for him than just give him the ball and let him create. Mike, you'll jump in here, kind of close this Duke UNC comparison, coaching staff stuff. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I look at it is Scheyer and the Duke program are proactive in everything they do, whether it be recruiting, portal, analytics, however you want to describe it. Carolina is always reactive, or they have been for the better part of the last decade, right? You could look at that just straight up in the roster construction, right? It almost feels like whenever we have whatever the deficiency is in one season, the next season Hubert kind of the pendulum swings and we try to attack it for roster construction that way, but we leave the other, like, you know, this year the backcourt is a disaster. I think we could all agree on. The front court's amazing. The year prior, front court was awful. Backcourt was amazing. It just feels like it's always kind of like he's on his back foot with everything. And I just think everyone is kind of becoming aware of that. And, you know, as we see it more and more, especially if we don't make it past this first weekend, which I don't think we will, the noise is just going to get louder and louder and louder.
Yeah. So on that note, dude, I'm like sick of rooting against my head coach, you know? Like, I want to cheer for UNC without this, like, because I know Hubert Davis is not the guy. But like, so it's like, I mean, it's like kind of tough. It's like, all right, if he's brought back next year, it's like I have to argue with the same guys again in the group chat about Hubert Davis, and I have to keep listening for my other friend who's berating me with texts that are anti-Hubert Davis. Like, I just want to be able all on the same page and cheer for UNC and like hope for them to do well and like build and like, oh shit, we got this 5-star. It's awesome. A couple things just kind of close this part of the conversation up. I do think that like people do say Hubert Davis is not recruiting as well. And you're like, well, all right, we got Drake Powell. Ian Jackson was a pretty good recruit. Caleb Wilson, like that, he recruited Caleb Wilson. Sure, I'm sure he paid him a lot of money, but there is a recruiting factor. Henry Vaystar was a massive get. That's panned out better than I could have expected. Derek Dixon, he's probably lived up to expectations as a freshman, if not exceeded them in expectations. He's not going to be some elite NBA player, but could be a Marcus Page type player for UNC if kind of excels and continues on his trajectory. So I think the recruiting is not as big of an issue. It's not Duke level, but it's certainly not horrible. There are some massive misses, like you mentioned, Riley, with Will Shaver, and Zayden High, just players, and like James Brown doesn't look like he's ever going to play again for UNC. Jalen Washington was okay, but he got his like shot blocked 3 times at Vanderbilt today.
Okay. Let me make the case for Jay Wash real quick. I was not a Jay Wash guy at all. Let me rephrase that. Always liked interviewing the kid, doing media stuff. Seemed like a super humble, just
great guy.
It's like I understood why his teammates loved him and everything. In terms of like buying into the upside, as far as anything more than like a 10-minute a game big at this level, never really envisioned that much more beyond like what we saw at UNC. But at Vandy this year, I've watched a lot of Commodores games because I do some SEC coverage. He has been a plus defender for them, like literally this whole season. There were stretches of this year where Vandy was going through losing streaks, and I would watch it and think, okay, these guards need to help Jay Wash out more. They're not containing their man. They're not staying in front of their guy, and it's putting Washington in a bad position. So I know he played poorly in the final against Arkansas today, but every time I watch him, like, dude, this is a different player than I saw for 3 years in Chapel Hill. And
Riley, do you think it's more? But do you think it's player development? Because I look at Jay Wash, you look at Tyler Nickel, you look at Cade Tyson. I wouldn't count Ian Jackson, but like we're seeing some guys that transfer out of Carolina and do much better.
This is an interesting conversation because. Go ahead, Riley.
Oh, I was just going to say, in terms of like every criticism we have for not just Hubert, but like the assistants, I think you could apply that in terms of player development. And when it becomes a trend or when there's multiple examples, it's kind of telling, I would say. Like Mark Byington's another one of those forward-thinking young coaches who I love. Many people forget he is in the Carolina family, as in he went to the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. So he was someone I would put in I would be on my short list of coaches who I think could succeed at UNC and would do really well. But anyway, like he's found success at JMU, where he had more resources than anyone else in the conference, and now he's finding success at Vanderbilt, where he has fewer resources than anyone in the conference. But I think when you get those staffs who have like worked their way up, who kind of understand like this is life and death and I have to adapt and evolve, you're probably going to make some good hires or some beneficial hires that are going to help with player development and put those guys in the right spot. Now, some of it feels a little fluky, like Cade Tyson. I think he just from the moment he stepped on the floor in that exhibition against Memphis, it didn't look like he was ready for the bright lights of Carolina. So maybe that's more of an outlier, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't at least a little bit concerning.
So I think it's interesting because like Cade Tyson one's a weird one, but like you can't fault Tyler Nickel. He's a freshman at UNC and he's gotten better every year, right? It's kind of what you see. You would just hope they would wait it out, and he went. This is his third school at Vanderbilt, and as a senior, and he's playing really good. If he stayed for a fourth year at Carolina, would that be the same player? So I don't know if that's like fair. The players are kind of built differently now, where like if they don't get success as a freshman, they're gone. If players like Joel Berry did that, they would have left after the freshman year. Ian Jackson, I don't know if we used him right. I don't think we used Drake Powell right. I kind of like, man, Drake Powell was so good. I just feel like we did not get to see him as a full player because how freakishly athletic he was in a lot of games in the second half of the season. Cade Tyson one's so weird, man. Like, I just think it was a bad roster fit and then just never got a chance to get comfortable and just didn't play enough.
Another quick one, and back to your original point about not putting players in the position to succeed, is probably Ellie Cadeau, right? Like, if you look at Ellie Cadeau's season stats at Michigan this year, they're pretty damn similar to what he did at Carolina his sophomore year. But the conversation about him is night and day difference, right? Like he's a plus contributor for Michigan. Michigan fans really, my soon-to-be sister-in-law is a Michigan grad, and they rave about Elliot Cadeau. And
Yeah.
so, back to your original point, how much of his player development, how much of it is just making sure your players are able to succeed?
Well, Elliott's on like a team with some really strong talent. I'm sure Riley watches them more than I do, but like they have Yaxel
I
Lindenberg.
understand, but
Yeah, so I mean,
it's awesome.
I think Elliott on this UNC team with the lob threat of Caleb Wilson and Vasar would have been unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
he would have been the perfect guard for this roster, and then pairing him with the shooters. He could drive and dish and do all this stuff. That's what this team needed. Like a very controlled, assist focused point guard. I think Elliot Cadeau was pretty good at UNC, right? I mean, the teams weren't great, but I thought he was, started and
So-
did some good things.
He had some high highs. Like there were some.
Yeah.
It always felt like you saw the flashes, and we're just waiting for
Yeah.
it to all coalesce.
I mean, he turned the ball over a lot. I mean, I'm not saying he was
Yeah.
unbelievable. Sorry, I want to correct myself before I get like clipped. I mean, he had some awful games and like definitely cost UNC sometimes, but like you saw all the ability and like he flashed it sometimes. Go ahead.
I mean, he was the starter for a team that got a 1 seed and won the ACC by multiple games. Like that
Yeah.
means something. And I think, from my perspective, like I held strong. I held strong to this notion for as long as I could that I fully believe this version of Elliot Cadeau hitting 38% of his threes today in that Big Ten championship game is literally knocking down step back triples that we never even saw him attempt in Chapel Hill. I think in order for him to blossom into that player, he needed a change of scenery. So it's tough for me to be like, oh, had we just retained Elliott, we would get this current
Yeah.
version that we're seeing at Michigan. I think there still would have been a lot of the frustrations. And even early on, when you look at how much Carolina played through Henry Vasar and Caleb Wilson together, like both those dudes have so much freedom in terms of initiating the offense. Caleb in particular, like got to lead the break whenever he wanted to and was largely excellent at it. I think in that sense, just having a guard who could hit an open jumper and who had size and who could attack a closeout, do some playmaking. Someone like, I mean, I know they looked for a little bit at Trey Donaldson, but he's a pretty good shooter off the catch and can do that and can break you down off the dribble and can be a point of attack defender. Like he's the one who I think would have been a perfect fit for this roster as well. But on the Cadeau topic too, I think it really like hurts my heart going back and watching his NH Lightning tape on the EYBL circuit when he was putting up like 20 and 15 games like it was nothing right before he reclassed, and you could see how gifted he was at throwing lobs, and all the quotes are like, oh, I'd rather get an assist than a bucket. Like all these teammates want to play with him because they know he's gonna set them up for success, put them in a good position or whatever. And in 2 years, love Armando Bacot, love everything he meant to this program. Wouldn't necessarily classify him a lob threat. And then the next year it was like, okay, have fun throwing lobs to Vin Allen Lubin, who's like your height, Ross. Like he might be an inch and a half taller than you. So like, it's just like, how did you not at least just land 1 7-footer? Like just go get a ramp. It seems like there's so many power conference teams that just have the raw 7-footer who's just there to be big and athletic, who maybe develops into something. And it feels like for 5 years, we've never really taken a chance on those guys.
Yeah.
We get James Brown, who's undersized. Will Shaver was like not really, I don't know, had a weird build. It's just
Some Will Wade build. Yeah. Will Shaver's been mentioned more times in this podcast. He's probably been mentioned on any other podcast ever. All right, we'll move this on a little bit here. I also want to say, like, UNC went after Nick Boyd and the transfer portal. He was like the #1 pick, and he's like crushing it at Wisconsin. He is going to be a first-team Big Ten player. They scored 37 a couple games ago, like killing it for them. So, like, they went after him. Why couldn't you get him? Why did he visit Wisconsin, visit UNC, and then go to Wisconsin? I don't know, man. Like, that's recruiting right there. It probably wasn't a money issue. Maybe they underbid, but you got to learn from his lessons. And that was the first time that Jim Tanner had that experience. They ended up with Kyan Evans instead of Nick Boyd. I mean, like, that's kind of alternate universe right there. All right. Quickly, Rowback.com. We're all wearing Rowback. Rowback sponsored podcast. Big Hitters 20 on Rowback. Get for first-time buyers. Get your girlfriend something, fiance, wife, boyfriend, husband. Rowback, great gear, great polos, great golf gear, Q-zips, vests, sweatshirts, hoodies. All right, quickly here. We'll get out and get the podcast to Connor for some editing here, late night. All right, let's look forward. UNC lose to VCU. What do you think happens? We'll start with Mike. They lose by 10 to VCU. It's a classic game. What happens with the UNC basketball program?
God, I wish I could say that I think the leadership, the noise gets so loud that they have to do something. I think just based on how they operate and based on everything going on behind the scenes, the arena stuff, they're just going to retain him. I think Hubert's. I think we're having this type of podcast a year from now as well. Like, I think we're going to hold on for another year. I think the roster will not be as. I mean, I'd love to make a splash in the portal, but I'm not as confident in the roster next year, especially without a lottery pick. I don't think Dylan Mingo and Maximo Adams are going to bring the same level of talent that Caleb Wilson did. And I think we will be less competitive, while Duke will be in the same kind of position. And I think the noise will just get ever louder. So I think he will be back. I think we do lose to VCU. I think Hubert will be back, and I think he'll be let go, or there will be some type of resignation behind the scenes after next year.
Question, Mike. Why do you think the Smith Center debate affects this decision?
So I think right now, if I were just trying to put myself in the chancellor's office, right? If I'm Lee Roberts, this is a guy that, like, with Bubba Cunningham and Steve Newmark kind of working on this behind the scenes, I don't think they fully recognized the level of pushback they're going to get from kind of the Carolina, family, so to speak. I don't think they anticipated that, and they spent probably way more time and effort and energy fighting this fight on the arena, which has to happen, in my opinion, than they ever thought they would. And I think the kind of double whammy that you have with the fan base, where Carolina is kind of traditional, and you have a lot of people kind of, supporting the idea of Carolina basketball. I think the double whammy of, hey, we're leaving the Smith Center, which I think is inevitable, and firing the hand-pointed successor of Roy Williams and someone that is a classic Carolina guy would just be too much and draw so much negative PR that I think they're afraid to do it.
It's like a double anti-Carolina family, anti-Roy Williams move, a double slap in the face.
I don't think they'll do that. I think they should. I think we all here recognize that, like, we can't see Hubert Davis being the coach of Carolina in 3 seasons, so I'm always of the mind that you pull the Band-Aid off faster, especially knowing that Kentucky will probably open up after next year, that, Bill Self is not going to last much longer at Kansas. He's probably going to retire here shortly. And so you don't want to be competing against the other Blue Bloods when they are also conducting coaching searches. I think you have a lot of young guys, Byington, DeCastlin, TJ Otzelberg from Iowa State, that would be gettable and a huge upgrade. And I think I'm of the mind, do it now, rip the Band-Aid off, let's move forward. I just don't see them doing it.
Yeah, Mike and I were talking before you hopped on, Riley, that, like, if he's not going to be the guy in 5 years, if you don't see him as your coach in 5 years, like, you fire him, now. Like, you hire the coach, you want him to be the coach for the next 20 years. All right, Riley, jump in here. What do you want to happen? What do you think happens if UNC loses to VCU?
Yeah, I mean, my preference if they lost to VCU would be negotiate some sort of buyout, let Hubert step down, resign, gracefully retire. Just say you're retiring. He's in his late 50s. His son is graduating. Go kick it with your family. We already, remember he gave that quote when he was try-boxing the national championship, with the football national championship with some Paramount show while scouting Notre Dame. Ripped off a 6-game winning streak after that quote, by the way. So maybe that's the method that works for him. But it's like, you see quotes like that. It's like, dude, I don't necessarily question his competitive spirit by any means, but I do have some lingering doubts. Like, do you really want this job and all that it entails in 2026, where you have to flip your roster every single year and then you have to coach them? And then on top of that, you're at Carolina, one of the 5 biggest brands in the sport. So you pretty much have to function like the mayor of Chapel Hill and interact with the fan base and schmooze and do all of that.
Fundraising is huge, and I'm not sure he is up to that task.
Yeah, like everything with that. That's what, if I'm Lee Roberts, Steve Newmark, I'm sending him down and be like, yo, dude, we see this, we notice this. Let's negotiate something and let you just bow out gracefully. Because guess what? You can come back to wherever Carolina is playing 2-3 years from now, and you're going to get a standing ovation because that graphic on the Jumbotron is going to say Hubert Davis, 2022 national runner-up, 2024 ACC champion. It's not going to say missed tournaments or frustrations or double-digit deficits or whatever. Like, you will still be remembered fondly when you come back a couple of years from now if you step down. And I don't know, he is a Carolina guy through and through. Maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. So that would be my hope. Everything Mike said about like the Dean Dome debate, I actually hadn't really factored that in. I kind of just assumed that like Roberts and Newmark don't really care about that kind of stuff. To me, the whole Smith Center debate, even all the committees, all of that feels like window dressing, and they're still just going to go build a new one in Carolina North. Like, every quote Roberts gives about it is basically money, 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 chain restaurants and bars. Like, I would love for them to build it in Odom Village so you still have that same experience, but someone really has to consider those chain restaurants and bars. Like,
whole different podcast. I don't have enough time to get into the No, it's good.
I didn't mean to derail us with that, but
yeah,
like, that's where I was like, yeah, maybe this guy just doesn't care and he's going to do what he wants. But I think Mike has some good points where maybe that the pushback from like the old guard would reach too much of a fever pitch for both to happen like the same offseason.
I wonder if you gave true serum to, the top 100 former UNC players, Joel Berry, Theo Pinson, Tyler Hansborough, Justin Jackson, and get to older guys, if you gave them true serum and they wanted Hubert Davis to be fired or not, what would they truly say? These guys aren't idiots, man. I mean,
I think they love the guy, honestly. Like, I think they really love the guy. I think you
really.
I think you can hold two thoughts at once. Like, I think you could love the person, but recognize that they're not the right person for the job, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Whether they want to fired or not.
I think they're going to kind of advocate for what Riley is pitching, right? Like, they will only want him out if he resigns. They don't want him forced out. I think that's the difficult tightrope to walk.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think also there was a large, not large portion, but a portion of the UNC family of like my generation that wanted Wes Miller to be hired. So they weren't really of the Hubert Davis camp. They wanted the kind of the newer coach. Not that that's an option now, but I don't know, man. I think a lot of these guys watch basketball like we do, and they know more than we do, and they see the same shit and even see it probably more glaringly. Like, I don't know the X's and O's and what's going wrong, and they do, and they're probably yelling at the TV just like we are, and they want to win probably just as much as we do. So I don't know.
I think you get like TJ Otzelberg from Iowa State. You hold on to Marcus Page. You hold on to Hoots, and I think you can kind of salvage the relationship.
Oh yeah, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah,
it is a great time to fire a coach. Like, the contract's not crazy. You've been saying the targets. I mean, we've been talking about this off and on all season. Otzelberger, Iowa State, dude, they win with less. And recruiting to Iowa State, like, I mean, where do you even fly into versus recruiting Chapel Hill?
Imagine the rowback partnerships we could get with Schmedium Polos and honor TJ Otzelberger if he was our coach.
But that wouldn't even be my first pick. I mean, I like Mark Byington. I mean, I kind of want to see a little bit more from him at Vanderbilt. He's like a Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia guy. He's coached in Georgia, South Carolina's assistant, I think. I think it's Charleston. And then in Virginia at a couple places. He's from Virginia, and he played at UNCW. But he has not coached North Carolina, but he's like, that's his region is like UNC's like football recruiting base. Tommy Lloyd at Arizona. I mean, I think I have heard that he would be very open to entertaining a school like Carolina. Nate Oates, shake the tree, Nate Oates, and I know a lot of purists don't like Nate Oates. I would ask Dusty May. Now, if I was Dusty May, I would not leave Michigan for UNC. But I think you ask him, maybe he doesn't want to be second fiddle to whatever they have going on there in the post-Sherrone Moore era in Michigan. So there's a lot of good options. I think it's a great time it's great. I mean, and also it's UNC, man. You should have the pick. 10 years ago, you'd have the pick of any coach out there, right? Top 3 school. Now, I think it's a little bit the Carolina thing. I don't think is as important as it used to be. So you don't have as much of an allure as you did 10, 15 years ago.
And
all right.
Yet still, okay, I got to add one last note, Ross. This is where when I get so frustrated with Carolina fans being like, well, who would you hire? I'm like, I think it's easier to list the coaches who wouldn't take the job than it would be to list the coaches who would, Because you think about it, it's a $15 million, $14 million plus dollar roster. It's like top 10 nationally in spending. I'm pretty sure at least. Like you're going to have the resources needed. You have the highest paid general manager in the sport, so the resources that are there for your support staff, and there's likely a new arena coming. Like I think Carolina's done a ton to ensure that it's an appealing job. And that's even before you factor in the tradition, the brand, all of that stuff. So.
National fan base, when it's rolling, it is unbelievable. Also, this is kind of funny. UNC has the highest paid GM in football and in basketball. How nuts is that?
The financial clearance is there. It's just
getting our money's worth.
I know. All right, let's get out of here. We got the podcast. Connor, really appreciate your time. That was fun, guys. It's always good speaking to Ballners. Mike, how did Riley do? Your first time with Riley?
Dude, awesome.
Yeah, Riley knows his stuff. He says stuff. I don't know if it's all right, but he says a lot of things that I hope is accurate when it comes to the inside basketball stuff. Guys, rowback.com, promo code BigHitters20. We appreciate your time. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.